Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Wednesday, Season 2, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're immediately picking up after Wednesday passed out from her vision, obviously having an interesting conversation with her mom about like her abilities and how they're kind of, first and foremost about their relationship being fraught, as her mother puts it. But they also focus on the black tears are supposed to be a sign that you're overusing your ability. In fact, her mom's like, you're abusing the ability. It's meant to be a gift, not a weapon, which then makes you wonder what was Ophelia doing then if she was doing what she did and eventually potentially got driven mad by all of this. But like, what was she doing? Like, did she kind of get lost in the sauce of, like, was she just as inquisitive and solving mysteries and unraveling things just like Wednesday, especially considering Morticia keeps making the parallel to Ophelia and Wednesday? Or was there some other extenuating circumstances? Like, did she like living in those visions rather than living in her own head? Stuff like that I'm curious about. But I think it's really interesting too that there's a conversation about the whole Wednesday trying to control something that isn't meant to be controlled. It's like, first and foremost, you have to wait for your next guide. Goody was your spirit guide. You need to wait for your next guide to come along to kind of lead you down your road. Because, Wednesday and her mom are in this crossroad because, like, Wednesday's like, you told me to basically forge my own path, but now every time I'm trying to, you're putting blockades. But it's like, as your mom, it's my duty to look after you and make sure that you aren't your worst enemy, because for her, she's seen it. She's seeing history repeat itself, and maybe that's also why she's so protective of Wednesday, overprotective, because she always showed so much of her sister and her daughter. But it also might be some overcompensation for apparently Morticia's complicated relationship with her own mother. So, history repeating itself in that capacity. But the other thing I was going to point out that was interesting is later on, Capri has an interesting conversation to Wednesday about like, her cello performance. Like, I want you to be a part of this thing, and it's like you are so busy trying to take control, and that's why it's kind of coming off like you're not really leaning into the music. Like, let the note take control of you. It's like the fact is we're having that same conversation in this episode when she at the beginning of the episode has a conversation about control with her mom, because like Wednesday is a little bit of a control freak. She wants things to kind of bend to her will, obviously because that's Wednesday's personality, but also like she wants everything to kind of always flow the way she wants them to, and that isn't how things work. And I think that's playing into why she finds out later on her ability isn't working. Initially, I was thinking that was a byproduct of maybe the killer has something to do with blocking her ability. Because even when she was initially using her ability to find out who her stalker was, she couldn't see them. But now in retrospect, I'm like, well, we kind of got an answer to that, but we'll get to that. Because that's two separate... Well, the stalker she couldn't see is not the same stalker that's killing people. Yeah, because the other stalker is in the form of the birds. But like I said, we found one stalker this episode. But I'll get to that soon enough. But yeah, like my initial thought was like her ability was just being countered by like the killer, but it's like, no, it seems like it's maybe like there's a spiritual backlash of you're not like you're using the ability too much, and because of that we've kind of sealed it away from you. Maybe there's a psychological thing there. We'll have to wait to see, but obviously because of her vision and fear about what might happen to Enid, like she ends up going to Galpin's place, and ultimately there she finds Galpin's dead body. The moment his mouth was open, I was like, a bunch of birds are going to come flying out, and lo and behold, they do. And so, poor Galpin. I mean, especially when you saw the state of his house too. I mean, doesn't make it right, but you're understandable why, like, obviously, like, he's kind of, it's like, oh, like, an evil lives here and stuff like that, obviously in this case it's like the sins of the son are onto the sins of the father, but I'm sure like even Galpin felt his own regrets about how things played out when it came to Tyler and stuff like that, feeling fault in his own ways about everything. But of course Wednesday would get caught at the crime scene, but luckily her dad playing the lawyer card Also, he's like, yeah, we'll keep this hush hush from your mom because last thing either one of us wants. But it's also like, well, convince mom to leave. It's like, well, your mom's not going to leave. She's made up her mind, and there's no changing that. But he also brings up the fact is because she's like, oh, what happened to Aunt Ophelia? And he's like, that's not my story to tell. Um, the only person who'll probably tell her that story is her mom, but she, considering how complicated the relationship is, she's not the biggest fan of asking her mom for help. She's not the biggest fan of asking her family for help in general, but they kind of come through because her dad knows, like, right, you're just as like mischievous and kind of up to stuff as much as I am. Like, you get some of that from me, but it's like it's like I think she has an easier time bonding with her dad. Even though she does keep him at a distance, just like her mom, but it's like her mom is at an even deeper distance, because they are so similar in their own ways too. That leads to the friction and bumping of heads, I believe. Obviously, quite a bit last season delved into the Addams family's like lineage and stuff like that, and the past. It's actually interesting too because obviously we're seeing that kind of. It seems like more so on Morticia's side of the family because like Barry's like insistence on getting Morticia's mom because her mom like runs like basically she took like a mortician company and like kind of grew it so big she owns like one of the biggest like outcast companies out there. And then so Barry's insistence on getting close to Morticia and Wednesday to the point that Wednesday was like, oh, I thought I humiliated you at the end of the last episode. He was like, no, I was down for him. Like, no, you were caught off guard by it, but you're playing it because like once again, like the popularity that Wednesday has and the way the people of the school see her as kind of like lead outcast, he's positioning her he needs for whatever he's doing. And it's like, does he have the best of intentions? Maybe. Is he kind of going about it the slimiest way? Definitely. Like manipulating, even forcing Bianca's hand later on, being like, oh, I need you to force Morticia to bring her mom into the fold because Morticia's come on as the person for the gala, but it's like we need her mom's money. So it's all so Wednesday was your way to kind of get Morticia around so that you could get to her mom. Maybe there's a deeper play there as well. Who knows? But also his preparedness that he already came with a means of defending himself against a siren's power. And and he's like, oh, like if you don't do what I say, Bianca, I can lift up your future or I can be the one that crushes it. So kind of a major tool. But the fact is, I feel like we are also setting up an interesting like callback later on because he's making such a point to her being like, oh, keep your eye on the ball. There's a lot of eye stuff this season. Wednesday's visions, the literal like bird with the messed up eye that was leading the charge of all these birds killing people, taking their eyes and stuff. But also like it's got to be like whether that's later in this first half of the season or whether it's going to be in the second half of the season. I think Bianca's going to get her one up on Barry and is going to catch him slipping, and you feel like you already kind of caught a glimpse of the setup, and it's just a matter of when the payoff comes about. But it's like, yeah, that feels like a 1-2 punch of a situation, but we'll see. But sadly, Bianca still ultimately ends up going through with it because she had talked to Morticia because they were kind of having the complicated mother conversations about Bianca's complicated relationship with her mother. She's trying to like dig herself up from under like all the stuff with her mom, and Morticia's complicated relationship with her own mother, and once again the Wednesday of it all. So quite the interesting triumphant of mother issues. I was surprised Pugsley ended up I was about to say telling Eugene. Eugene kind of stumbled upon it, but the whole slurp of it all, which I was like, it's also really weird too because Pugsley's like, oh my god, like it's my friend and my pet. I was like, that's kind of, I was like, well, the Addams family is weird as they are, but it's like you kind of resurrected a guy, and it's like, are you really going to be keeping him as a pet? Once again, there are some very like Frankenstein like esque parallels you can draw in this capacity. But I brought it up last episode. I was pretty sure like Pugsley was going to completely keep that to himself, but he kind of had no choice but to bring Eugene into the fold. But that's all this game brought into the fold in this conversation. So, And they did make the point to notice that like the Slurp, as he's called, has no brain. I was like, interesting, and I guess that's also the irony behind it, where it's like he was supposed to be such a gifted person. Which, like, the whole Iago Tower thing that happens later in the episode, they're like, oh, it was like an electrical storm thing, and because of that, the place has been closed off. I was like, isn't that the same place where Slurp did what he did back in the day, and because of that, he ended up, like, dying? I think so, because in it referenced the storm and everything, the electrical storm, that I feel like there's a, which is ironic then if electricity part of, because I think he got shocked and then he like, or I think it was an explosion, right? That he fell out the window, because I was about to say, like, if electricity was responsible for killing you and then bringing you back, it's like, oh, that's sweet. I guess irony would kind of be, I don't know. I guess you could say that was ironic, but the fact is that he's in the condition he's in. I was like, well, he's got to like eventually like get a brain again, all right, so that he can have like his consciousness back. It's like, would anyone's brain do? As we see at the end of the episode, it seems like it, because he is basically a zombie. So I guess eating. I wonder, is it going to be a thing of is he going to like eat someone's brain? And there's many ways you could go with that. I'm curious to see what happens, because I was thinking to myself, maybe you could make it so that every time he eats a brain, like it basically maybe he's going to try eating brains over and over again until he finds the perfect brain that kind of mimics or mirrors his original brain. Or not less, like he picks and chooses certain pieces, like he's eating people's brains, but maybe he picks certain pieces and he starts basically, in a very Frankenstein's monster type of way, stitching together the perfect brain. I think that'd be kind of interesting too. Or maybe it's a thing of, once again, throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall in this regard. But like, it'd be really interesting too if it was more like a thing of every time he gobbles up a brain, it gives him a brain temporarily, but maybe like his genius or whatever overpowers the brain, so he constantly has to find a new brain to, basically replace the one that he burned through. Once again, a lot of heavy speculation on that, so we'll see what kind of happens in that regard. I'm interested to see what the brain element to this all plays out, especially because not going to be so easy to have him as a best friend / pet, well, when he's running amok, and also going to end up potentially being smarter than you, depending on how that plays out. So that dynamic might get a full 180. I don't remember if Christopher really. I'm shifting gears a little bit. Sorry. I don't remember if Christopher Lloyd was in last season. I still did not go back to rewatch season 1, but I'm like, I feel like I would have remembered that, because obviously Thornhill was played by Christina Ricci, so it's so she was a main secret villain of the season, so, and she was very prominent throughout the season. But I feel like I don't remember Christopher Lloyd. So I'm like, is this the first season he was in? I don't remember if I feel like I would have remembered him being in it, but maybe he was, and they just had such a small part. Either way, it's been so long since I've seen the other Addams Family's movies, like the ones from the 90s, that I'm like, there probably are other castings maybe connected to those that I'm just not remembering. It'd be kind of interesting too if they snuck in some of the animated people, if I don't know if it happened, but because I know Chloe Grace Moretz voiced Wednesday in the animated movies, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if anything like that would happen, but still, you know what I'm saying, stuff like that. I've never looked too deeply into it to know if they've done other castings from the original movie have been sprinkled in as well. And like I said, I just don't remember. But anyway, tangents and all that aside. Well, I say original, but the movies from the 90s. Another thing we have in this episode is poor, well, pun intended, Thing feeling so unappreciated. Poor guy, because it's his birthday and no one remembered, because he's stuck between Wednesday and Morticia. It's Wednesday wants you to be on her side and your loyalty is to her, but then Morticia's like, no, your loyalty is to me and this family. And he's kind of being torn between the two, to the point he kind of gets pissed at Morticia's like, yo, don't use your poor relationship with Wednesday and take it out on me. which I even love. Like, she's like, "Oh, we don't take advantage of you. We don't treat you more like a servant." And then it's like, "Oh, they're drinking and they toss their glasses on the glass cup on the ground, and be like, oh, dim the lights thing." And that whole thing with Gomez be like, "Little," he's like, "Hey, don't skip out on the drinks." He's like, "A little more, stop, more." Oh, come on, that's too much. What are you doing now? I'm like, I love that. It's so messed up. It's sad when the, once again, pun intended, steady hand of the Addams family feels very unappreciated, you know? After everything he's done, I mean, to the point he's drinking later on. And the only person that seems to always kind of be in his corner and always kind of support him and not expect too much from him, not in the regards of like wanting too much from him, is Enid. And, you know, being like, "Oh, you're a member of an honorary member of our pack," you know? So a big thing in this episode is also Wednesday going to see Tyler because she's hoping to get some answers from him, because it's like, well, if anyone wanted, and if, I don't know if she fully thought he might have had anything to do with his dad's death, but the way they talk about it later on, she had already had set up like weeks in advance having a sit down with him. I guess it was more so like a, even though she was lying and saying like, oh, she was mainly coming here for closure, I wonder, was there some truth to that? Because the fact that she put in, once again, the paperwork all that time ago, so maybe she was going to question him inside. At one point, you know, because I think for her, it's the whole falling in love with him thing and kind of getting blindsided in that regard was probably just kind of like a, I need to learn from this. I can't let that happen again, being blindsided by my feelings in that capacity. I was curious initially when she was like, oh, she had a ride, and then like Enid was looking for her like permission to like take her driver's test. I was like, oh, interesting. So she just hijacks that situation, drives like a bat out of hell to the facility where she meets Tyler, psychologist, played by Tandy Newton. I was like, hey, I was like, I think I saw some promotional material with her in it. I was like, oh, that's dope. Funny, just interesting little tidbit. I didn't find this out till like well after the fact. It was like a couple episodes after, during season one. I never found an outlet to talk about it. But if you've ever seen The Last of Us season one, the actress who plays Sarah in that is her daughter. I believe her name's Nico Parker. I believe she's also like the other lead in the live action How to Train Your Dragon. It's like the most recent thing she was in. So just thought that was just kind of interesting. I was like, oh, I had no idea. And in retrospect, I was like, oh, I could see it. Either way. She's trying to help Tyler because apparently she's a foremost psychologist when it comes to helping outcasts, even though she herself isn't an outcast, which I love the parallel, the metaphor Wednesday goes with. It's like a vegetarian writing about or trying to, what was it, help or understand a cannibal or something like that. I'm butchering the metaphor she had made. But essentially, she wanted Wednesday's help because apparently she's got Tyler and Thornhill at two different places because Thornhill refuses to be like, oh, I'm not his master. I'm not, the one manipulating him. And Tyler is the uncooperative, manipulative person that he is as well. So there's not been any real progress. But she's hoping that by keeping them separated, that'll kind of lessen their guards and they'll kind of feel weakened not being around each other. So hoping that Wednesday's appearance will kind of disrupt Tyler, kind of catch him off his game and make it so that the true healing can kind of begin. So Tyler and Wednesday have their first confrontation since he got locked up. I'd even suggested in episode one, I was like, maybe are we? Because I was like, we saw him kind of transforming at the end of season one, didn't we? Or did he like break free and then like? Once again, it's my own fault for not recapping with season one. Was that him like breaking, like getting caught and then breaking free? Like early at one point in the season and then getting caught again? Or I could have sworn the season ended with him like in the back of a truck transforming, but that might have been a different scene entirely. I don't remember. So either way, he's locked up. They got him in quite the facility. And it's interesting too, just considering like I've talked about it, like my introduction to Hunter Duhan was like Adam in Your Honor and versing that character into who, versus what this character is. And there's another psychotic character he played in something else super recently. No spoilers on what it is. it really wouldn't ruin anything, but it's just kind of interesting. Um, I guess production wise, he probably would have ended up doing that other thing well before he ended up doing season 2 of this. Maybe, maybe not. Like, it just I don't know how the productions line up in that regard. But either way, putting all that aside, it is interesting. Like, this is like the first time they fully are having conversations without like the facade, and him talking about like Wednesday, him and her cut from the same cloth. That it's like you could just as easily been here if things basically you took a wrong turn. You could have easily been me. It could easily be you locked up here, and saying he had nothing to do with his dad's death. Because like, yeah, he might have had issues with his dad, but maybe on some level, even in his deepest, darkest of hearts and being who he is, maybe even it makes you wonder. It doesn't seem like he's sad, but he might be so far down in that dark pit that is his heart and soul that he can't really register like his dad being dead. And I mean, he kind of pauses for a second, so it's like maybe it did hit him to some extent. I don't know. It's hard to say. He's not really going to be wearing his heart properly on his sleeve, because even if he is a sociopath and psychopath, so he probably doesn't actually feel anything. So I might be giving him too much credit in that capacity. But I did like Wednesday twisting the knife, especially when Tyler was running his mouth about Enid, how he's going to get her back for what she did to him. And it's like, oh, I'm going to make, and obviously Wednesday's having her vision about Enid being killed, or rather dying, and it being her fault. But then her saying, like, right, essentially kind of twisting the knife about, like, how unimportant he is and how he'll, he wants to be more important than he is. But she's like, the fact of the matter is, I'll never have to visit you again because I'm living rent free in your mind. The fact is that it isn't about me forgetting you. It's your inability to forget me. The fact is, you can't let me go because I bested you. I am better than you. I'm smarter than you, and I beat you. Kind of, very, I guess you could look at it as almost like a very Moriarty and Sherlock relationship, which is interesting because some versions have, like, especially like I think of like the TV show Elementary of Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu, that very much leaned into the whole Moriarty and Sherlock having a relationship too. So there's a very neat parallel in that capacity. While Wednesday was gone, Enid and Bruno both got kidnapped. Poor Bruno kind of getting dragged in the middle of this. It's like, well, Wednesday's more her friend than yours, but and even he asked, like, yo, why are you staying by her side? It's like, yeah, I know she'll be, like, basically the light at the end of my tunnel, but it's still, like, I can't imagine my life without her. It's like, yeah, like, everything, like, she's become your best friend. I think especially when you've felt like an outcast amongst outcasts, and the person who's never cared about being an outcast and, in fact, embraces it. I think it kind of made Enid more comfortable with herself in a lot of ways. So I think it's a really nice juxtaposition friendship. They're pretty much the very oddball couple in that capacity. You still do feel a little bad about the whole Ajax of it all, but it makes sense where it's like she got closer to her pack. She's kind of diving into like her werewolf side more, and so this is someone that's a little more her speed, understands her, especially because they end up finding out, apparently Bruno is in the same vein as Enid, where like he was the last one in his family to transform, and so is she. So there's a lot of like parallels, and I think they've just naturally hit it off, where it's just like, being from the same, species kind of ends up helping, understand each other in a way, and just kind of leaves, funny enough using the term, but kind of leaves Ajax in the lurch a little bit, But either way, chained up, swords dangling above their heads, classic trap situation. The blades were falling one at a time, but then later on it's like, no, they're lowering all at once. So luckily, Wednesday and Thing went to the rescue. I love that sequence when they're in the tunnel, like, and that person in the red hood, like in the mask, it's like you see them in the background, and then like the camera, like Wednesday moves a certain way, and then she moves again, and they're gone, and then just like appearing and disappearing. I was like, oh, I love like creepy stuff like that. And now, in the long run, we end up finding out the person behind all of this. They said her name in the episode. I don't know what it is. I don't remember. I don't know if it was like Agnes or something like that. It probably wasn't that. It was something like that with an A, but I don't remember. It's the redheaded girl who's part of that little group that's so obsessed with Wednesday. And define also very Cheshire Cat like way. I mean, because the answer to the riddle was what's missing amongst the books, and it was who's not there, and it was The Invisible Man book by H.G. Wells. And I was like, oh, that's so neat. And especially how she made herself appear. And this is why I meant very Cheshire Cat inspired, where it's like it was just her hands clapping and then the rest of her body appeared. I was like, I would have never suspected that. I thought she's an obsessive fangirl. We find out she's the stalker because she wants to like prove herself to Wednesday. And I think that'll probably complicate things because she'll probably be like, I want to become your friend and I can be a better assistant to you than Enid. Like, because I'm your super fan, I'm kind of a sycophant. And the fact is that I will do anything for you. And look at all this, like all that I accomplished. I didn't do it on my own. I blackmailed some Da Vinci's with some Snapchat photos they kind of don't want out there. And it's like, because of that, like, I know you're slightly impressed with what I've done. And so she's going to be more embracing of this, wanting to help Wednesday improve herself more than Enid, because Enid kind of wants to like just enjoy her life. But I'm sure that's going to be a conflict of interest where it's like, oh, I'm kind of getting pushed to the wayside. My bestie is being taken from me type of thing. But we'll see. I get the feeling like Wednesday will utilize her. Granted, it's like her obsessiveness with you wouldn't be the first person. It's like the fact is you ran into Tyler again, met with Tyler this episode, and then also found out about one of your stalkers who actually isn't the killer, but was just a super fan trying to get close to you because she wanted to be your friend and went about it the most crazy way. But for her, it's like, well, this is a more interesting approach to get close to Wednesday versus like Enid just being Enid and them being roommates and forced to cohabitate kind of ended up inadvertently making them best friends. So you gotta, I guess, appreciate the initiative that and wherewithal to go down this route to get Wednesday's attention. So I guess the point is like you were never concerned about Wednesday failing because you knew she'd come through and then she'd be impressed with the elaborate nature of everything you put together. So, but this is what I was talking about earlier, where it's like it makes sense why you could never see the stalker because they were invisible. So them having their ability, you were always seeing through their, you can never see outside of them because they were always invisible watching you. So that's one kind of unintentional side mission dealt with because you're like, well, that's not anything directly related to the overall murders and stuff that have been taking place. Which, funny enough, there is another murder that is unassociated because there's some stuff your brother did. So that's going to be interesting when that eventually comes up, or not less Pugsley and Eugene end up covering that up just to protect themselves. Because that guy, the driver's ed teacher, left a message for Barry after about like he's not going to be teaching at Never anymore because of Wednesday. So that might, I don't know if that, like, it depends on whether he was still on the phone at the time when he was being brutally murdered or not, or whether he ended a call beforehand, because he did hit slurp first while he was in middle of recording that message. So some of that probably did get caught on the phone, but who knows. Then there's also back to the whole thing of Wednesday's abilities. She was having Thing look through Goody's book, but her mom took the book. So it's just all about trying to get that back and try to get some answers about, all right, regaining her ability. But it might be one of those things of the power was within you all along. You just had to, once again, kind of stop trying to control it. And like I said, the Capri of it all feels like there's something there. Either she's going to end up getting murdered, which would be extremely sad, especially like all that. Like, it feels like they're going to be set up to be like, she seems suspicious, but it's probably not going to be her. She's just probably going to be the key to helping Wednesday kind of finally let go and be able to use her ability properly again, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.